Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Makbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at the economic condition of the country, especially the value of the rupee, which fortunately has continued to appreciate consecutively for many days now and has, for the sixth consecutive session on Friday, gained against the dollar. It has gained rupees 1.18 in the interbank market today and closed at rupees 228.45 per dollar, which is up 0.52% more than yesterday's close, which was at 229.63. This is, of course, an important development considering this is one of the major concerns regarding our economic conditions that has been there for a while now, where we've seen, of course, the value of the rupee depreciating to all-time lows. And so we're going to be taking a look at what this development means and how, moving forward, we're going to be able to see any sort of continuation of this positive trajectory. In other news that has just happened before the beginning of the show, the finance minister has spoken about the development of prices of petrol as well, in which he has announced a reduction of rupees 12.13 in the prices of petrol, which is, of course, a significant development. He's also talked about the filing of tax returns and said because of the concerns of the business community, especially because many of the areas have been affected largely by the devastating floods of this year, the deadline for filing tax returns has also been extended to 31st of October, and he talked about how he had asked the community to be able to file the returns before this deadline and to abide by that. But again, when we take a look at the economic policies moving forward that are required in terms of what has happened, especially with the value of the rupee, there is important measures that are being highlighted, which is, of course, with relation to speculators in the markets and, of course, the networks that have been operating illegally and how strict action against them is why this particular value has appreciated. It also talks about how the exporters were, of course, given a 1-month deadline to deposit their proceeds in the banks, and perhaps because of them selling crazily, this particular development also took place. There are other suggestions coming in from economic experts, including the fact that the government should be able to regulate the car market more seriously and also present a bill in this regard in the parliament. What needs to be done regarding that? We're going to be taking a look in our first segment. Also, what sort of action can be taken against the speculators in the future as well, and if we can develop a comprehensive strategy moving forward. In our second segment today, we're going to be taking a look at the political situation of the country. Of course, something, again, very closely linked to our economic conditions as well. But in recent times, we have seen that there are serious concerns regarding cybersecurity measures, due to which, in this week, we've also seen a meeting of the National Security Committee chaired by the Prime Minister, in which various measures were talked about, and security has been beefed up at the PM office and other important locations, as well as a legal framework has been asked by the Law Ministry to design. And moving forward, an investigative committee has also been formed to handle the issue of the high-powered audio leaks as well. We've also seen that following the audio leaks from the Prime Minister's office, we've also seen now 2 audio leaks coming in regarding PTI's leadership as well, including the former Prime Minister Imran Khan. Part 1 of that particular audio clip also surfaced, and now we've seen that another audio clip talking about the same cipher that has been used as part of a narrative by the PTI has surfaced again. This time, this audio leak featured Shah Mahmood Qureshi, the former foreign minister, Imran Khan, the former prime minister, and also Azam Khan, who's, of course, the principal secretary as well. We've seen that another audio regarding what needs to be done in terms of manipulating the cipher for personal political gains has been talked about. How the particular meeting that was referred in the first audio is also being talked about in detail, where we see the former Prime Minister also talking about how the public will not be able to tell the difference between a transcript and a letter, and that is what he is instructing to his fellows that is to be used in rallies as well, and has also spoken about the fact that under no circumstances the name of the country is going to be taken, in this case, the United States, which unfortunately was something that the former Prime Minister incidentally himself did. So we're going to be now taking a look at this particular audio and what concerns are raised in terms of cybersecurity measures, and then obviously, of course, in terms of how this narrative is being done for personal political gains and not considering the impact that it has on national interests. So for this and more, of course, in the studios, as always, I've been joined by senior analysts Farouk Batafi and Raja Faisal. And we've also been joined regarding our first segment, considering the economic situation, the value of the rupee, by Dr. Hakan Najib, former advisor, Ministry of Finance, and also Dr. Sajid Amin, Deputy Executive Director, SDPI. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us today. Let me start with you, Dr. Hakan. When we take a look at, of course, this particular development in terms of the appreciating value of the rupee, it's an important and welcome development, considering we have been wanting to see this happen for quite some time now. Of course, there's a long way to go and what the public would like to see. But firstly, in terms of this particular development, and especially in the past few days, what has been happening, your views on that, and then also when we talk about the factors which contribute to this development, would you say that this is something that can be long lasting and sustainable, or do you think it has happened because of temporary factors?
Bismillah Rahman Rahim. It's always my pleasure to be on PTV World. Thanks for having me. Look, I think it's a very difficult time for economic governance across the world, and especially for Pakistan. So let me start with what's happening in the world. The world's clearly going through what we call stagflation. Stagflation means that there is a slowing growth and there is a rising inflationary trend in the world. In that context, Pakistan was having a balance of payments crisis, as we've had a number of times. We had one in 2018, and then we are seeing another one now. That's the way the Pakistan economy has somehow gotten geared, that as soon as we increase our growth rate, we end up with a balance of payments crisis. In this particular case, what has made it more difficult is that the crunch on the dollar has gotten longer because the fund program, the IMF program, which was due to be done on 4th of March, got done on the 29th of August. This delay, the uncertainty with it, and then the floods, all of course put pressure on the reserves of Pakistan. Pakistan's reserves were hovering around $19 billion with the State Bank of Pakistan sometime September 21, are today at $8 billion, despite the fact that we've had a $1 billion injection from the fund. So that's the overall picture of where we are. The markets have reacted negatively on this, and you saw that the rupee slided. It came back when the fund came in, and now again after sliding later, it has gained some strength. Of course, there is a new economic leadership at the Ministry of Finance, and a leadership which is more conscious on the rupee. So that's a factor which is driving sentiment. But what I am hoping more so is that something has changed fundamentally also. And when I say that, I mean, I was talking to the Asian Development Bank, and I heard some good news that $1.5 billion in a counter-cyclical facility is likely to come in the end of October to Pakistan. So that's good development. World Bank's thinking about $2 billion of repurposing monies. We've just seen that US has probably done some rollover of our facilities. So some flood money as well as the fund money has come in, and our reserves are hopefully, we've seen the worst and could be built from here. So that's the second thing that has happened. The third thing, I think, which is driving a little bit of comfort on the Forex market is the fact that the crude oil price hovering around 120 on the Brent is now at 88 on the Brent. This automatically takes off a little bit of pressure on the import bill of Pakistan. So
Right.
one hopes
Dr.
that
Saab,
happens.
since you are talking about fundamental shift, I was wondering whether you are going to actually comment on the fundamental shift within the country, our domestic economic situation. Right now, you are actually pointing to the external factors. Do you think that internally also our approach to fiscal disciplining has also changed?
Look, I think that right now what makes a difference is the balance of payments, because that is the crisis one is going through. The fiscal has an impact on the balance of payments, of course. I was just hearing of the numbers on the fiscal. The numbers for the first quarter are looking good, and that's a healthy sign. we've collected approximately 1,635 billion rupees in the first quarter. Despite floods, despite slowing of the large scale manufacturing by over 16%, we've crossed the target of 1608. So, and the third thing that I must mention is because a lot of our FBR money comes from imports. Imports have slowed in July and August, but still the collection has been good. And that is because the corporate profits have been good. If you look at corporate profits of Pakistan, that is a heartening sign that I see there. But the spending needs will increase as well. You need to spend a lot of money to help the flood victims. That should be a
Absolutely.
business.
Dr.
I think
Sajid, when we take a look at this development, particularly at the moment of the appreciation of the rupee, I want to understand the importance in terms of the measures taken and that should be taken in the future as well against speculators. Of course, this is something that has been talked about as a contributing factor. And then also when we talk about how we would like to proceed further, whether or not there exists or should be any form of strict action against these speculators, and how does the government actually go about it? Do we have a strategy already in place that needs further improvement, or do we need to be able to look at this more comprehensively?
And can you identify the cracks through which these speculators keep sliding out and managing whatever they are? Because I thought that after the international pressure, we had actually changed our legal framework to such an extent that this should be impossible.
Well, thank you. I think too many questions and too many difficult questions, to be honest. But I think this was very rightly said in the first question. I mean, the focus on speculation. Dr. Najib has been sort of speaking on in terms of economic fundamentals. But I think one of the key reasons that we see the sort of volatility that rupee was having, it's more speculation which is driving rupee over the last couple of months more than the economic fundamentals actually. And I think one of the key indicator for this is that the very sharp spikes, upward, downward, appreciation, depreciation, was coming more from speculative pressures. And just to add one point, that the recent gain to me is more kind of the market sentiment in terms of maybe some sort of reduction in speculative pressures because of the new economic team coming. What I fear is that maybe this is again short-lived. As it was in August, if you see from Yakam August to 15 August, from 1st to 15 of August, we had a very sharp decline or the gain in rupee actually. And suddenly then there was again back to 240, 241 rupees. So I think this is the speculative pressure that is coming. And what factor, I think, two factors were driving speculative pressure on rupee. And if they remain there, we will continue to sort of see those speculative pressure. The one is the weak economic fundamentals. In a country with very weak economic fundamentals, the good news and bad news becomes one of the catalyzers actually, and they impact the currencies beyond the size they should actually. For example, the change of finance minister in any strong economic fundamental country should not bring that much change in the currency, because we have a very weak fundamental and market knows that fundamentals are very weak. So if when some news comes, there is a gain. But the moment that news is absorbed, the currency goes back to its origin and starts depreciating. So I think this will be very interesting to see how long this gain rally continues. The second factor, I think, that is driving this speculative pressure more or catalyzing this more is more a fundamental level. In Pakistan, we have been historically trained to keep rupees overvalued. We have been keeping it by the nature of our growth that we do have. The State Bank of Pakistan under the SBP Amendment Act 2021 has been made to let the exchange rate go flexible by the market determined exchange rate under the IMF pressure or under the IMF conditions. And I believe that is the right condition. Market exchange rate should be determined by the market. But I think the State Bank has not been trained enough or has not have some hands-on practice in sort of curtailing these speculative pressures. I mean, if we see, for example, right now, I don't know what is the definition of any sort of adverse movement or some sort of disorderly movement. When it comes, a movement becomes a disorderly movement, because if we see, the state bank has been more on a reactive front. The rupee has been slipping. Once it slipped rupees 10 to 20 within a week or two, then State Bank of Pakistan thinks that this is a disorderly move and I should go. I think we need to move towards a preemptive approach. We should have a very clear criteria that
Yeah,
what does it mean
Dr.
by
Sajid,
30.
yeah,
Yes, please.
Absolutely.
Dr.
I want to
Sajid,
talk more about that.
yeah,
Yes, Faisal.
Dr. Sajid, if we look at the current situation of the country, obviously I'm talking about the flood crisis. Obviously, it has its own impact on Pakistan's economy right now. Can we say that we must be and we should be expecting from the world to obviously send aid to Pakistan right now, because Pakistan's economy is facing crisis just because of flood crisis. And in this case, we keep on using the word aid for Pakistan, obviously owing to the fact that Pakistan has floods right now. Can we say that rather than using the word aid, we should be demanding compensation from the bigger economies of the world? Because when it comes to carbon emissions, Pakistan is one of the countries that has the lowest carbon emissions, whereas at the same time Pakistan is one of the countries which is the worst hit by climate change and global warming. So the bigger economies, do you think that they must compensate Pakistan, and that compensation, when it reaches to Pakistan, would it be having a good effect on Pakistan's economy, and how sustainable it would be for Pakistan's economy, sir?
Well, thank you. I think you have a very important question, but there are two sides to it actually. What is morally that should be done? That is what you are saying, that climate justice requires that the developed countries, those who are responsible for this climate change catastrophe, they should campaign. But this is a big should actually. I don't see much, you can call it aid or compensation or whatever you can call it. But I think we are over expecting from the world for two reasons at least, I think. The one is that the global, the world itself is going through a recession. Every country is sort of stuck in its own. If you see the Germany, if you see the Britain, if you see the USA, they're all stuck in their own economic problems. Inflation is picking up, sort of growth is slowing down, energy prices are picking up. So every country has its own problems. So I don't see much coming. You call it aid or you call it sort of the climate justice or compensation. But definitely, and the second point is, I think one of the key reasons that this climate compensation may not materialize is that it's a voluntary contribution so far. There is so far no sort of a decided framework that really set a qualified criteria and that imposes sort of compensations at the global level for those who have been behind these climate change catastrophe over the longer period of time through their industrialization and carbon emissions. I think one that we need to do is, whatever the word we use, but I think we may need to put our case very strongly. One visit from UN Secretary General, while it picks us a good voice, it gives us a good voice, but I think we need a very systematic approach to make our case for debt reliefs, debt reschedulings. And I think the sort of what we can try right now, I think, is on two fronts. One is the compensation and the aid, whatever you call. But I think the sideline, and which is more important, is the debt rescheduling at least. If we can have a significant debt rescheduling, then I think it will have some sort of a greater or significant impact on Pakistan's economy. Otherwise, I think I don't see any major change coming in Pakistan's economic on external
Right,
fronts.
and of course, this is an
through the
important
lens of-
aspect considering how big of an impact the floods have had on our economic situation and will continue to have on the next decade or so. Farooq, of course, when we take a look at what Dr. Sajid was saying, we have different platforms where we've talked about this particular climate catastrophe and how justice needs to be done and how the international community needs to respond. But of course, as Dr. Sajid was pointing out, perhaps a mechanism to be able to see that happen and to have a sustained support is not there yet. How have we factored in the loss and damage that has occurred in the floods in our economic plans and strategies for the future, irrespective of the kind of international help we will or will not get?
Right. Sana, yesterday I actually went to NFRCC, the center where we were given, presentations by the Honorable Minister, who is the in charge also, was there, explained a lot of things. And then the head of NDMA and the deputy chief also were there. So one thing that is clear at this moment regarding damage assessment, it is going to be a time-taking process. Why? Because most of the places still have water. You cannot assess the true damage until the water has receded. And Pakistan has instituted a study to actually evaluate the damage with the help of World Bank and one more international partner. Regarding the international aid and support at this time, we were told that the government of Pakistan is satisfied that all the major actors, all the major partners are really cooperating. May it be international banks, may it be, this a bit about rescheduling also. You saw that today even the US has actually rescheduled some of the loan that was given to Pakistan, and that continues. It is a piecemeal process, but it will continue. The concern they told us or shared with us was something else. While we are mobilizing international support, and whenever you have a final number, because there is a very transparent kind of study, eventually we are going to actually talk to our international partners that we need this much support. But domestically, there was fundraising exercise that was continuing. But because the media now gets obsessed about other things, like we just very effectively, I must actually compliment Raja Faisal, how effectively he took attention away from rupee and dollar parity issue, and he actually made it about floods. But it is important.
It is.
Our media has not focused on the devastation recently, and because of that, people have thought that somehow the issue has disappeared, and the domestic mobilization of funds has stopped or has trickled, reduced or petered out. So it is important to remind the people that it is time that you have to step forward and keep on contributing to for the uplift of our worst affected friends and but others.
Yeah, Dr. Haqqan, if we talk about obviously debt rescheduling, can we say that in current scenario, of course, it would be a successful campaign for Pakistan to get the favors in terms of debt rescheduling? Of course, Farooq has rightly pointed out that America has taken a step. Will we be seeing more countries obviously following the example set by the US, number one? And number two, of course, very recently we had UN Secretary General, he was in Pakistan and he categorically said that Pakistan needs help from the Western countries and the whole world if it needs help. And he made effective calls at that time. Just wanted to know if there are, his calls are being heard and we are being helped by the world in terms of, reschedule the debts or in terms of compensation amount or aid amount. Can we say that very soon we can mend our ways and our economy would have a very positive impact by that?
And Dr. Saab, could you give us any update on Pakistan's negotiations with Paris Club and other such important groups which might be actually there, particularly regarding rescheduling of our loans?
Okay, so debt rescheduling is something the country has to think about very, very carefully. First, one thing should be clear that we do not ask for any rescheduling on the commercial or the bonds that Pakistan has floated. Since we've started talking about this, just to quote, the Pakistan bonds have not been doing well internationally. The bond that is due in December 2022 and the bond due in April 24 have both gone down in value. So one thing is very clear, and I don't know why bond players haven't understood this. What we are talking about is what you are saying, the Paris Club rescheduling, and something we've just done in the COVID days, which was called the Debt Service Suspension Initiative of $3.7 billion. The Paris Club, Pakistan owes about $10 billion. That is the overall quantum of what we owe them. I think what we are immediately going to be approaching or have started to approach through the Economic Affairs Division should be the $1.175 billion. So that is what we owe to them this financial year, FY23. And if, let's say, we were to be able to reschedule this, which would mean that we would get a 1 year grace period or about 5 to 7 years of payable period. So that's quite good. That's the kind of initiative that happened in COVID times. So practically, I think this is possible. This, for example, this year would give you about 250 odd billion rupees of space because you would not have to make that payment. Then there is the China debt. I am hearing that Pakistan will also be talking about the China debt. Even I think the IMF is keen on that we should be talking about the China debt because a large portion
And
of our debt is
Secretary Blinken, he actually suggested Pakistan to do that as well.
That's correct. But China debt has to be thought of a little more carefully, and the reason is that in reciprocity, we owe China in terms of the IPP payments, which go in hundreds of billions of rupees, which go into the circular debt. There is some reciprocity there, but that's in rupees, so maybe that could be thought of as well. So all the bilateral partners we can approach, the Paris Club as well as China, have just done something like that of about $300 million this year. So I am hoping that the process will start, and because there are a number of countries in Paris Club and we have to go to everyone, one hopes that the process can be done. The other thing that is possible is that we have an oil facility with Saudi Arabia. The Saudi Arabia oil facility, I think we already have talked to them that we would be paying them subsequently and not this year of the oil purchases, and it is in a doubling phase. One is not sure if that doubling has happened, and that is something that could be there. With Qatar also, the RLNG could be on deferred payment. So these are things that you could do, because I keep saying
Dr. Sir, there is a reason. There is a reason why I actually brought up Paris Club, because Mr. Ismail, before he left his office, while he was visiting the US, he actually made a statement to this effect that Pakistan is in negotiations with Paris Club for the rescheduling of the debt. So perhaps I thought that we might have some progress. Let us hope in coming days. Over to you, Sana.
Right, Dr. Sajid, my last question in this segment, since we're almost out of time. When we take a look at the current economic conditions and especially the recent developments, there's also talk about the role of exporters in this regard. And some economic experts have suggested that there needs to be a deadline set for the exporters to deposit their proceeds in the banks. What sort of effect do you think that will have, and whether or not that is a good suggestion? And also add to that what you were earlier saying in terms of preemptive action to be taken with regards to our economic situation, considering that at the moment we're barely managing the economic crises that we are facing. Are we in a position to be able to take any such preemptive steps, and if so, what immediate steps do you suggest?
And Dr. Sajid, supplementary question, if obviously as we are seeing that gradual change in the exchange rate between rupee and dollar, what kind of impact it would have on the exports of Pakistan and exporters of Pakistan?
Well, thank you. Let me start in a reverse order. I think if we can sustain this gain in rupee, maybe 20 to 25 or rupees 30, so this can ease out to overall economy. For example, even keeping the levies as we have agreed with the IMF, there will be a room sort of to cut down the oil prices. And that is, what one of the key reasons that has been really hurting the industry, be it local industry or be it the exporting industries. So if we have a combination of some slight changes in global oil prices, and at the same time we can sort of have this currency gain of rupees 20 to 30 rupees consistently, then we will be able to pass on that gain to the industry or to the producers. As we see today, that we have gained rupees 15 around so far over the last uh, 5 6 days, and there was $2 to $3 sort of dip in global oil prices. So we have been able to pass on this gain to the uh, consumers today, actually, if in terms of renewed petroleum prices in Pakistan. So if this trend continues, we can do this pass, and this will definitely help exporters to reduce their cost of production and definitely increasing their competitiveness at this level. But I think one fear
Sure.
that I've been discussing. Yes, please. You wanted to say
Go ahead,
something?
go ahead, complete your thought.
I think one fear is that we may over engage in the populism. That will be really serious. I mean, we not necessarily that we pass every uh, minor change or every temporary change 100% to the consumer just for the populism, as the last government did, even reversing almost the IMF program, bringing Pakistan to halt. I think we have to plan very carefully that the gains should be passed, but not at the cost of fiscal indiscipline. Any uncertainty about IMF program, any uncertainty about conditions that we have committed, just for the sake of bringing a currency fixation to rupee, will be counterproductive. And I think there we have been suggesting that the focus should be separating, letting economic fundamentals impact pass to currency, and stopping the speculative pressure. The team should be focused on curbing the speculative pressure, but it should not freeze any effect changes coming from the economic fundamentals that should be let pass to rupee. It should not be, we should not be back to the initial 2013-17 regime, where we have been sort of freezing the impact of fundamentals on rupee, and that is what we call artificial overvaluation or artificial stabilization. That will be hurting us actually.
Right.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Sajid, for joining us, and Dr. Khakan Najeeb for being with us regarding this very important issue. Of course, Farooq, I'm sensing that you'd like to add something.
No, I was just thanking him. But I actually had a question, but later on, some other day. I
Sure.
wanted to know what our worthy guest actually thought about the change in the policy making and how exactly will do they see that the new leadership, finance leadership, is going to implement whatever they were suggesting. But I hope that in coming days we are going to talk about that as well.
Absolutely. Of course, the economic conditions of the country is an important aspect, but so is the political dynamic that we have been also talking about in our show, especially with regards to cybersecurity issues and audio leaks, which keep on surfacing. And we've seen another one coming in, which includes the former Prime Minister Imran Khan and also the former Foreign Minister and the Principal Secretary of PTI. Earlier, we saw that there was a previous audio leak including the former Prime Minister, in which the cipher was discussed with regards to PTI and how it is going to manipulate that for personal political gains. Faisal, when you look at now both of the audios and the second one also surfacing and talking about in detail what is going to happen, what sort of meeting is going to take place, and how certain meeting minutes are going to be recorded, it seemed quite obvious that this is something that was planned and used for political gains of PTI. And also when we talk about even references made to how this particular letter or transcript is going to be referred to, it seems that all of the details were also covered. So when we take a look at such audio clips, it becomes quite apparent what the motivation has been behind it. But that doesn't seem to be the case when we look at statements coming in from the PTI. They have a completely different viewpoint. What's your point on that?
Sana, it is a sad situation in which what I am seeing, obviously after these audios coming out, that rather than rather than thinking about the country, rather than thinking about the foreign policy of the country or foreign relations of the country, what they thought of is what kind of narrative they can gain out of it. And it is not only sad, but it is alarming as well, because it can create a trust deficit, country to country based, not the one political party and the other country. See, this is why when it actually happened in the very early days, while obviously in the public processions, PTI, they were claiming that, and they constantly took the name of the country, obviously America. At that time, I suggested, and I talked about it as well, that it should never be done like this.
Right,
if
but
they
Faisal-
have.
Faisal, and you can continue, but I just want a clarification. If you heard the audio, the former Prime Minister quite clearly said and repeats quite a few times that the name of the country should not be taken and that he shouldn't hear this from anyone. But the first time that this particular country was mentioned was by
In a
the
speech.
former Prime Minister.
Yeah, it was, and that is why I say that they shouldn't have done that. They should have never done that. Why? Because if they had, if they wanted to use this, what was the best scenario? That they should have, taken the name of the political party which is ruling in US. They should have gone against the party which is ruling, the Biden policy, or the Biden policy towards South Asia. They could have mentioned that. Rather than that, obviously they took the name of the country, which is alarming. It should have never happened. And to me, I think this
Faisal,
is very
that's
sad
not
to see
even
that.
that's not even the highlight of the audio, that the name of the country was taken. There's a lot more that's going on, even if the
it
name
is.
wasn't taken.
Yeah, it is, and obviously, he using the word "we can play over it." I mean, this is not a game which you can play. This is about two country or your relations with another country. And
This is actually, in fact,
America,
about national interest and whether or not you care about it.
exactly.
Farooq, when we take a look at this audio with reference to the previous audio clip as well, it again seems quite clear what is going on. But what Faisal hasn't answered yet is what the PTI still seems to be thinking about it. And I don't understand how they're reconciling their statement that in fact it supports their argument that the cable or the cipher was hidden from the ex-PM. There's no mention of that, and it doesn't seem to connect.
Right, and let me begin by with a compliment to our dear Faisal for the heroic effort of the segue away from what exactly was being discussed and actually focusing on something that was minute and perhaps tertiary importance. I think that the main thing or mainstay of this clip is a plot to dupe people. Pull wool over their eyes, and I think that is now a matter of record. But my concern once again is, although there seems to be, and I'm going to borrow two words or techniques, one word from cricket, that is spin. We have repeatedly seen spin being induced, included in the narrative, the word that our dear Faisal actually likes. But narrative is being built in a way. For example, today Imran Khan Sahab was actually riding a helicopter, but because he was using it, nobody actually was focusing on the fact that it could be at the expense of public exchequer. So the focus was, look, he's offering prayers in the helicopter, right? And then I thought that I must put out the tweet that it is not essential to use a helicopter to pray. But regardless, this spin will continue. But I think there is a principle of diminishing returns involved. Repeatedly you do it, you add as much spin as possible, but eventually people realize that something else is going on. The second thing that I'm going to borrow is from a police technique. They tie a person up and then they keep on, dripping water on their forehead, right? Drip, drip, drip. And because of that, no matter how healthy or strong you are, your entire experience converts into pure torture.
Yes.
So this drip, drip, drip of leaks will continue. We know why. And that is the most, the saddest part actually. It makes me sad that instead of focusing on how our security was compromised, our media, because we are so polarized and partisan, we will keep on talking about this leak or that leak. But the fact is that somebody who is actually a hacker sitting perhaps abroad is actually minting money as we speak. At this moment, he is releasing one clip, one sample that you can take whatever benefit you want to. We don't know what these 8 GBs of data is about. And so far, what we have heard is that there was an offer given to him for worth 5 billion rupees, right? Which is a big amount by any standard in Pakistan. And yet, those talks actually stalled. Now, what I see happening is that on both sides of the polarization, parties are going to approach him, and they are going to actually buy off the entire audio collection, and through that they are going to actually silence their own critics and use it against their opponent. But hackers usually have more than one backup. So, while they sell it to one side, they are going to sell it to the other, and then you are going to see more confusion. What I'm interested in was discussed yesterday and day before yesterday, how you are strengthening your defenses. We have heard that in cabinet meetings, now phone is not permitted. That will be kept out of the such places. But the quality of bugs, if there was a bug, needs to be discovered as well, whether it is a physical one or whether it is a software bug.
Absolutely, and you're so right in pointing out that the cybersecurity issues of the country are what we need to focus on and be able to understand that this is something that is against national interest and we need to take it seriously. There was a National Security Committee meeting, and we hope that we see some real changes there, and the fact that different political elements of the country don't take advantage of each other through such means. Thank you very much, Farooq and Faisal, for joining us. We'll see you on Monday. Have a nice weekend.